Today we'll be doing a double hitter of the Dragon Ball Z film franchise. The series is well known for its wide range of memorable villains, with the most popular one undoubtedly being Frieza. So it's hardly a surprise that the anime studio decided to capitalize on this by focusing not one but two films around his brother, Cooler. The first film, Cooler's Revenge, opens with a flashback to the final moments of Goku's father and the Saiyan race as they face impending doom, literally at Frieza's hand. We then pull away to find the event is being witnessed by a third party that catches sight of Goku's escape pod and are ready to shoot it down, but their leader, Cooler, dismisses it as a waste of time. Apparently they're paid by the laser. He correctly predicts that if the kid grows up to be a problem, it'll be Frieza's to deal with, so there's no need for him to get involved. And I'd like to take this opportunity to comment on just how great this scene is at tying the movie's story with the main series as well as establishing Cooler as a major player. Frieza's actions may be directly responsible for setting the entire Dragon Ball story in motion, but now we find out Cooler is just as, if not more, responsible for the simple fact that he allowed it. The story then jumps to a short time after Frieza's defeat. Cooler receives word of it and immediately sets out to avenge his family name. He arrives on Earth where Goku and company are out camping, and the rest of the movie becomes an extended battle, first against Cooler's elite guard and then against Cooler himself. He proves to be every bit Goku's equal until he decides to get serious and shows that, like his brother, he could transform into Super Shredder from outer space. Goku receives the beating of his life until pulling out one of the franchise's more creative finishes to win the day. The sequel, The Return of Cooler, deals with the new Namekian homeworld being invaded by the Big Getty Star, a giant planet killer. When Goku and friends arrive on the planet to fight off this threat, they quickly discover the invaders to be led by Cooler, who's gotten a few upgrades since his previous defeat. Now known as Meta Cooler, he easily matches Goku blow for blow, but it's plain to see that he has the edge thanks to his enhanced abilities and self-repair mechanic. Even the timely arrival of Vegeta does little to turn the tide in a fight that unfortunately comes nowhere near Ken and Ryu versus Bison, but I'll take it. They soon learn that the Big Getty Star is a sentient machine that absorbed Cooler's remains, then found its consciousness dominated by his. A plot device eerily similar to a Marvel Comics storyline that would appear almost 2 decades later. While the finish isn't quite as creative as the first films, it still deserves credit since it has some great visuals that may or may not call back to Akira, and it doesn't involve Goku shouting out, "Everyone, please give me your energy!" I happen to fall into the camp that feels the first movie was better, but the second one was no slouch either. The Dragon Ball films have a reputation for rehashing plot lines and events from the main series, and these films are no different. Largely being a summary of the Namek saga with a couple of nods to its aftermath. But what makes these movies stand on their own is the villain. Cooler was never mentioned in the book or the animated series. He was purely created for the films as a roundabout way to capitalize on Frieza's popularity. And the guy is just badass, from his design to his characterization. In contrast to his brother, who took a sick pleasure in playing with his food, there's a reason his fight is the longest in the series, Cooler prefers a no-nonsense, hands-on approach, which in a lot of ways makes him a much more serious threat than Frieza ever was. In fact, he goes out of his way to comment that his little brother was too soft for galactic domination, and when you see the guy in action, it's hard to argue with him. When he arrives on Earth, he doesn't mess around, he gets to work. When the Z fighters arrive on New Namek, he doesn't mess around, he gets to work. There's also another side of him that sadly doesn't get explored at all, but there's enough there to get the idea. Whereas Frieza happily executed his men for the smallest offenses and waited until his entire army had been wiped out before stepping onto the battlefield himself, Cooler jumps into the fray pretty much the moment things start looking dire for his men. During his fight with Goku, his transformation into Super Shredder comes not so much from him losing the fight, but more out of respect and joy of meeting a worthy opponent. And even though the first film is called Cooler's Revenge, he could really care less about Frieza's death, pointing out that he'd have killed him himself eventually. Instead, his motivation is to avenge the slight against his family name. This all seems to point to him having a code of honor, a trait that's very hard to find among the great DBZ villains. Coupled with his arrogant but not stupid mentality, he just might be one of the more fleshed out villains of the franchise. which makes it kind of a shame that both films really went out of their way to ensure we wouldn't be seeing him again, not even in an anime filler arc. I mainly chalk that up to the Boba Fett syndrome, where the creators never truly know what they have until they get fan feedback, and by then it's too late. But taking the Broly trilogy into account, maybe 2 was more than enough. And so we have a great villain, great action, and a fast-paced story that gets to the point with very little fluff, and the only real missed opportunities being Cooler's decisive demise and the 2-on-1 fight between him, Goku, and Vegeta not reaching its full potential. If you're a fan of the franchise but haven't tackled the film series yet, this would be a pretty good place to start. I'm Mo, and that's my review.